And now next up is Maxta, and we have Arjun Narang, who's a technical marketing engineer with Maxta. Take it away.
Hey, Scott, thank you, and thanks to everybody for attending today. So, as Scott mentioned, my name is Arjun Narang. I am a technical marketing engineer at Maxta, and today I'm going to spend some time discussing with you a little bit about Maxta, what we do in the hyperconverged market, and how we differentiate. So at Maxta, we like to say that we will be your last storage software purchase, and that's a bit of a bold statement, but hopefully, I'll be able to communicate that to you accurately throughout this presentation and convince you that Maxta would be the right choice for you going forward. So kind of a quick at a glance around Maxta and what we do within the hyperconverged storage market. So Maxta is built on a few core fundamental principles here when it comes to hyperconverged storage, and that would be that we want our platform to be flexible, simple, scalable, and cost-effective. So when we're talking about flexibility, we're saying, the hypervisor of your choice, the server of your choice, the storage device of your choice, and any workload that you want to run on that platform. Additionally, when it comes to flexibility, there's also this principle of application optimization, which I'll spend a lot of time today discussing, and the demo will go through to even further explain it to you. Simplicity. Similar to other hyperconverged vendors, we're all about moving away from that traditional storage array and the complexity of configuring LUNs and iSCSI networking. We want to give you a simple and easy to deploy and manage storage platform. Scalable. Maxta is a software-only software-defined storage platform, so that gives you the ability to both scale up and scale out. So what we mean with scale out is you can go ahead, similar to other hyperconverged appliances, you can just add a full node with compute and storage resources to grow your environment. But with Maxta's software-only approach, you can also go ahead and you can scale up. So you can actually add, just 1 terabyte of data into an available drive bay, or you can even scale up your compute and memory resources as necessary to fit the exact needs of your environment. And finally, cost-effective. So Maxta is a software-only solution. You get the server of your choice at the price of the reseller or whoever you work with. There's no, no kind of upsell, no Maxta bezel that we're going to charge you a lot of money for. And additionally, as we'll talk to more today, we also have a fully transferable software license. So what that means is you buy our software once, and you never need to repurchase it from us. So as a company, Maxta is funded by Tier 1 VCs, Tenaya Capital, Andreessen Horowitz, and Intel Capital. And Intel is a great relationship because not only do they provide us with funding, but they're also a development partner. So what that means for us is that we get Intel hardware before it's released to the public, and we get to test it and validate it in our labs and promise you support from day 0 of Intel's general available release. And now Maxta goes to market in 2 forms. As I've mentioned, we are a software-defined, storage platform. So that's called MXSP, Maxta Storage Platform. In addition to that, we've kind of tried to make the ordering process simpler for you by what we call Max Deploy Hyperconverged Appliances. So that's just going to be the Maxta software packaged together with the appliance, and there's no markup on that. It just gives you kind of, a single point of contact for ordering and support and, that full life cycle. So as you're probably familiar with, based on the fact that you're in this presentation, you've listened to several other companies before us, this is kind of your typical hyper-converged architecture, a few nodes that are converged compute and storage with some CPUs, some memory, some spinning disks, some SSD. On top of that, you have your hypervisor, then, the controller VMs, the VSAs, the virtual storage appliances, whatever you want to call them, will work together to give you your distributed storage layer. So now this together, hyperconverged total as a principle, is going to give you a single pane of glass, and it's going to really maximize your OpEx and your CapEx savings. So you're getting CapEx savings by eliminating the storage arrays and the storage networking. You're getting OpEx savings with simplified management, all while giving you the same enterprise class data services that you're used to from your traditional storage array, but now at a VM level granularity. So now the rest of the presentation, I really want to focus on how Maxta differentiates within the hyperconverged market. There are a few key principles here when it comes to maximizing flexibility. We're talking about software agility, and that's going to be a large discussion on our transferable software license and all the benefits that you get from our software-defined platform. Similarly, with flexibility is going to be an application-optimized storage platform. And what that means, again, is that you can tune the Maxta storage platform to meet the needs of each VM and each application within your environment. So you don't have to have just a general pool that you're trying to match to all your different applications. And finally, maximizing choice. Again, the core principles of this software-defined approach, any server, any hypervisor, any storage device, and any workload on the Maxta platform. All right, so let's start with a discussion here on software agility. And this is really going to go through kind of the model of purchasing storage and renewing and refreshing storage as it's gone from traditional storage arrays to hyperconverged appliances and now Maxta's approach. So when it comes to traditional storage, your hardware and software you would acquire it at one time. You would buy the array, and that comes packaged with the built-in storage software. So with that, you're getting this non-transferable software because it's packaged directly with the array itself. So say you've gone 4 to 5 years, you're looking at now, renewing your hardware. You're getting updates from whichever traditional storage array vendor is reaching out to you. And you go ahead, you upgrade your array, so you've lost the old hardware and software, and now you have to, again, purchase the hardware in addition to the software. So you're not being able to, every time you purchase a new storage array, you're paying for the hardware and the software together in one go. So now you see the hyperconverged appliances came in, and they are more cost-effective because, again, you're able to run on commodity servers. You don't need to buy that storage array and all of that storage networking associated. So now you're just buying your converged appliance. But again, that converged appliance is coming packaged with the software all in one unit. It's that non-transferable software where you're having the hardware and software in one box together. So now you're going to refresh your servers at a slightly faster rate because the pace of innovation is just quicker for servers than it is for storage. So now you're looking at maybe a 3-year refresh cycle with your hyperconverged appliance. And now when you refresh your appliance, again, you're going to have to get rid of that software and that hardware together and purchase a full new appliance with the hardware and software at that cost of, again, getting hardware and software rather than just the hardware that you want. So now Maxta's approach is really trying to deviate from this traditional model of having the hardware and software tied together and really give you the freedom to purchase the hardware when you want it and not have to renew your software license every time you do that. So we're offering you transferable software wherein you can only purchase your hardware. So again, you hit that three-year mark with your server, with your converged compute storage server of your choice, and you're going to go ahead and you're going to renew it because maybe Intel's released a new processor or some some new memory technology out there or anything like that. So it's going to hit that 3-year mark. And you're going to go ahead, you're going to buy your new hardware, the hardware of your choice, and you're just going to go ahead and transfer the Maxta software license to that new server at no cost. So the key here, again, is that you're purchasing the hardware you need when you need it without having to repurchase storage software. So now I'll talk a little bit about application optimization, and then we'll hop into a demo to really showcase the full abilities of the Maxta storage platform. So traditional storage was great because you could configure these LUNs, and those LUNs could be optimized for each application within your data center. So you could have Exchange, VDI, and maybe a SQL database running, and you could configure LUN A for Exchange, which would have certain RAID parameters, and some arrays even give you the ability to configure block size for that specific application. So you have these nicely configured LUNs that are specially suited for each application in your data center. But of course, the cons, as we know with traditional storage, is that it's very complex to deploy and manage. So configuring these LUNs was not very straightforward, and just the operational expenses are very high here. And of course, they're expensive. You have to pay for the storage array, you have to pay for the networking. It's just it's not the right model going forward. So now when you look at hyperconverged appliances, they've come in and they've solved this complexity. They've made it very simple to deploy and manage. They've made it more cost-effective by allowing you to run on commodity servers. But of course, now they're giving you this simple-to-manage uniform storage pool, which unfortunately is not the best solution for every application, right? You're not getting one size does not fit all. So you're having this uniform storage pool where, sure, maybe it's great for VDI, but you try to deploy Exchange and your SQL database on there, and you're not getting the best performance from those applications because you have this uniform storage pool with fixed attributes for all applications deployed on that storage pool. So now Maxta is going to come in and really try to give you the best of both worlds. We're going to make your life simple. It's simple to deploy and manage. It's cost effective, as we discussed. any server and you get that transferable software license. And then going back to that storage array, you're going to get the ability to optimize your storage to each individual application. So you deploy the simple to manage Maxta storage pool, but when you deploy Microsoft Exchange, you can configure policies on a VM and virtual disk level to optimize the Maxta storage for that specific VM or virtual disk and the application that's running within that VM. So you can have policies such as replica copies, enabling and disable compression and read cache, and we'll really deep dive into that through the demo coming up shortly. But the key here is that you can run a variety of applications all within a very simple to deploy and manage data store, and each of those applications will have storage optimized for themselves. All right, so now hopefully you have a good idea of what we're going to go through with the demo here, and I'll hop right into it so that we can get started.
So when we log into Maxta's MX Insight UI, the first thing you see will be the dashboard. This dashboard shows real-time cluster-level statistics. Now, keep in mind, this UI and all the functionality that we'll walk through today is exactly the same whether you deploy Maxta in an OpenStack, KVM, or VMware environment. We'll come back to Maxta's advanced historical and real-time statistics later. But to get started, let's hop into a demo of what we spent most of our time talking about, the application optimizations that can be made through a few simple clicks of Maxta's VM creation wizard. One thing to keep in mind here is that you can create VMs either through Maxta's MX Insight UI or through the Hypervisor's UI or APIs as you've been doing up until now. The only difference is that when you create a VM through Maxta's UI, you can set all of the policies on creation of the VM. Whereas if you create through the Hypervisor directly, you would just need to modify those policies after creating the VM. To start with, you'll see a lot of the same fields that are filled in when you create a VM through the vSphere web client. So we'll provide a VM name, a guest OS type, some information on CPU and memory resources. Then we'll select a host on which the VM's compute resources will reside. You can also attach an ISO, so say if you want to install Windows 2008, you can go ahead and attach the Win2K8 ISO and have the VM power-ons directly into that installer. You can also specify any network connectivity. Now we get into some of the more interesting stuff that Maxta Storage Platform is going to provide for you in order to have an optimal configuration for each VM and even vDisk within your environment. The first parameter that's available to you is number of replicas. By default, Maxta creates 2 copies of your data across the cluster. This allows you to survive any one disk or node failure with no downtime and no data loss. So now, let's say you have a VM that you want to have even higher availability or better fault tolerance for. You can go ahead, you can come in the UI, you can change the number of replicas to 3 or more, depending on the number of nodes in your cluster. Maxta will then go ahead and create more copies of your data, allowing you the ability to sustain more drive or node failures, again, with no downtime and no data loss. Below replica copies, you'll see rebuild priority. When a disk in a Maxta cluster fails, we go ahead and randomly put all the VM and its associated data that was on that disk into a queue and automatically start to rebuild the data from that failed disk to other disks and nodes within your Maxta cluster to return you to a fully highly available state. But now, again, let's say you have a VM which you want to have higher availability or higher fault tolerance for. You can go ahead, you can set that VM's rebuild priority to 10, and we'll put that VM's data at the top of the queue to get rebuilt onto other disks in the cluster first. The next parameter you'll see is metro clustering, or what we also call rack awareness. What this means is, say you have 3 sites, or 3 racks within your lab in your data center. You can go ahead, you can set rack awareness through Maxta's installer and assign nodes to each of those 3 racks. So now, let's say you have a different power supply hooked up to each of those racks. With rack awareness or metro clustering enabled, Maxta will go ahead and place 1 full copy of a VM's data on site 1 and another full copy of that data on either site 2 or site 3. This way, if the power supply to site 1 fails, you'll have no downtime and no data loss because there would be a full copy of data available on the other racks in your data center. Maxta will simply redirect the I/O path to this healthy active copy of data. By default, Maxta stripes data across as many nodes and disks in your cluster as possible. This gives you the performance benefit of all the disks and all the nodes in your cluster, and also provides better data distribution as you scale your environment. However, we also recognize that there may be certain situations where you'd want to have a form of data locality. If you go ahead and you uncheck this box for striping, Maxta will use what we call vertical striping, meaning that instead of striping data across multiple nodes, we'll actually write one full copy of a VM's data to one node and stripe it across the disk within that node, and then of course we'll also write another copy of data to another node in the cluster for HA purposes. But now, when you're reading data from that VM, its storage and compute resources will reside on the same node, providing for better performance under certain workload characteristics. As you can see already, there's a lot of flexibility built into the Maxta storage platform when it comes to data layout within your cluster. One other feature we have for data layout is called node affinity. Node affinity allows you to select a group of nodes that you want to restrict a VM's data placement to. So let's say you have a 10-node cluster and 3 of those nodes are high-performing nodes with maybe NVMe SSDs and 15K RPM HDDs, while the rest are just standard nodes with SATA SSDs and 7.2K RPM HDDs. What you can do with node affinity is go ahead and select the high-performing nodes, say nodes 1, 5, and 8 in the node affinity group screen here, and Maxta will restrict the placement of that VM's data to the nodes you have selected, thereby giving you some level of performance isolation within your Maxta data store. On the next screen here, let's take a look at a few of the virtual disk level policies you can set when creating VMs on the Maxta data store. Now, what you'll see here is that you can add multiple vDisks to your VM and configure unique sets of policies for each of those disks. You can configure the size, so say 40 gigs for the boot disk. You can also go ahead and set parameters like page size, which is going to allow you to align your storage block size with the page size of the application. So, say you're deploying a VM for Microsoft Exchange, which typically runs at a 32K page size. You can go ahead and set the page size of that vDisk to be aligned with the application at a 32K block size. Similarly, if you're deploying another vDisk for a database, you can go ahead and set that to an 8K page size to align with the DB. You can also specify the SCSI controller type for your vDisk. Two other parameters you can configure are read cache and compression. So let's say you're using this vDisk to store media files or encrypted data, both of which really aren't going to be all that compressible. You can go ahead and you can disable compression for that particular vDisk, which would thereby free up CPU cycles for the rest of your cluster rather than being used to try to compress uncompressible data. Similarly for read cache, if you have a vDisk which has data that will be accessed frequently but doesn't require high performance, go ahead and uncheck the read cache box. This will free up space on the SSD's read cache for other VMs which require higher performance to consume that space on the SSD. And so now, after we've set all of our policies to create our VM's optimal configuration, we'll click Submit. We're redirected to the Manage VMs page and our VM is created in seconds. This view will show all VMs that reside on the Maxta data store, whether they were created through MX Insight, as we just did, or through the Hypervisor's UI. So, as I discussed earlier, if we had created a VM through the vSphere web client, we could still come into the Maxta UI after the fact and go ahead and modify all of those policies we just looked at, replica copy, striping, etc. I can also add a vDisk and configure all of those policies that were available when first creating the VM. Now that we've created a VM, let's go back to Maxta's dashboard view and take a look at what insights can be gained into our virtual environment. The dashboard has stats for capacity, latency, IOPS, and throughput aggregated for all nodes in the Maxta cluster. What you see here is real-time statistics, but Maxta also captures historical data for all of these stats, which can be seen by expanding the graph view. From this view, you can select to look at stats from a few hours or a few days back. Or, if there was a failure over the weekend, you can even select a specific time period to look at. In addition to cluster-level statistics, we also break down the data on a per-node basis, giving you further granularity to better understand your environment. Node stats will show you the same data on capacity, latency, IOPS, and throughput, but now it's broken down on a per-node basis. Now, the one that I think is really cool is our VM level statistics. On this page, you can see latency and cache hit or miss ratios broken down on a per VM or even per VMDK or virtual disk basis. We show you the Maxta intent log, or what we call our write cache on SSD, the SSD read cache, and the in-memory cache, in addition to any cache misses. This allows you as an admin to get a very good understanding of how each VM is performing and what resources they are consuming. And finally, as you can see at the top of the page here, we also have historical data available for the VM level and node level stats. And that's a quick run through of a few of the key features of the Maxta UI when it comes to advanced real-time and historical statistics reporting, along with the wide set of configurations that can be made on a VM or vDisk level to provide you with a truly application-optimized hyperconverged storage platform.
All right, and so I hope basically from that demo that you guys got a great sense of the real-time statistics that Maxta has to offer and historical stats, and more importantly, the application-optimized storage platform wherein you can customize all of these policies on a per virtual machine and per virtual disk level. So just to kind of wrap up here and go over everything we've talked about so far today, I just want to discuss, Maxta's value proposition and kind of the four key points we discussed in the first slide. So maximizing your choice. Again, Maxta gives you that software-only platform, giving you the choice of any server, any hypervisor, any storage device, and supporting any workload. Maxta also gives you this, maximizing flexibility. So you have that transferable software license where your storage software is no longer tied to your hardware. When you refresh your servers, your storage array, whatever it may be, you don't need to transfer your storage license anymore like you did with the old model. And also Maxta gives you that application-optimized storage platform, as you saw in the demo just now, wherein you can go ahead and you can configure policies like number of replica copies or storage block size on a per VM and per virtual disk basis to give you the best performance and the best resiliency and whatever other characteristics you want for each workload. Again, similar to other hyperconverged vendors, Maxta is going to maximize your simplicity by allowing you to manage VMs and not storage, simplifying the deployment process, giving you single pane of glass with integration into the vSphere web client and other UIs. And then also, Maxta is going to maximize cost savings. So you're getting to deploy our software on standard components on the server of your choice, working with the vendors of your choice, and you're getting all of the capacity optimization features that you would expect from an enterprise-class storage platform. So the two key principles here to walk away with when you're thinking about Maxta and everything we've talked about today, the two key principles are going to be software agility and that transferable software license, as opposed to the traditional model of the non-transferable software license tied to your hardware. And also the application optimizations that Maxta allows you to make through its storage platform. With just a few simple clicks on deployment of a VM, you can get that VM suited to exactly the requirements that you need. So again, with Maxta, we're hoping that we can be your last storage software purchase.
Excellent. Excellent presentation. While we're doing our Q&A here, we've got a couple quick poll questions for the audience. So the first poll question is there on the screen. How important is it for you, for your hyperconverged infrastructure to support multiple hypervisors? And so let me ask you, Arjun, the first question here from the audience, and that is, just to recap, which hypervisors does Maxta support?
Yeah, so as of today, we support VMware and KVM or OpenStack, KVM running with OpenStack on top. And on the roadmap are, other hypervisors out there, whether it be Hyper-V or containers or others.
Okay, awesome. And so for those hypervisors, for example, VMware vSphere, what sort of integrated management do you all offer?
Yeah, so we're directly integrated into the vSphere web client as a plugin, and that same UI that we walked through in the demo is just, it'll just show up as a tab within the vSphere web client with all that functionality there too, so giving you that single pane of glass to manage compute and storage. Okay, so they should be able to perform all their day-to-day storage and vSphere infrastructure, administration from the vSphere web client. Then if they want additional storage,
perhaps advanced configurations or data, performance data, they can go into the Maxta web interface. Is that true?
Yeah, you can do everything through the vSphere web client because our web interface is actually integrated right into there.
Ah, gotcha. Nice. Okay. Second question here from the audience is, what's your licensing model? How does that work?
Yeah, our licensing is based on cores and capacity.
Okay, so cores and capacity of the servers that are part of the Maxta cluster. So it doesn't matter how much storage you have underneath. It's based on cores and capacity.
Yeah, cores and storage capacity. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, storage capacity. Got it.
Yeah.
And then, so what if somebody wanted to try out Maxta? Is there an online lab they can access, or can they download Maxta and try it in their lab environment?
Yeah, there are a few ways. The best will be to contact our sales team. I think we have the contact information on our website, sales@maxta.com, and we'll go ahead and we'll set up follow-up presentations, and you can go ahead and we'll give you software evaluation software licenses, or you can test it on the labs we have in-house.
Okay. Okay, nice. And then for the audience out there, we've got our second poll question up here. How large is your IT infrastructure staff, to get a size of your IT infrastructure group? And then Arjun, while that's up there, let's continue with a couple more questions. What is I know you guys have like a cloning or snapshot functionality. What's the difference between a vSphere snapshot and like a Maxta snapshot?
Yeah, sure. So when you take a snapshot through vSphere, they're going to go ahead and create delta VMDKs. Whereas in Maxta, our snapshots are really just pointers to the existing data. So the issue with those delta VMDKs in the vSphere model is really that, when you're trying to read or write data, you have to figure out which VMDK to read from or write to. With us, again, you're just going to be dealing with a single VMDK, and so you get that kind of unlimited number of snapshots and clones with time, performance, and capacity efficiency. So instant to create, no capacity consumed on creation, and no matter how many you deploy, they will not impact performance.
So would you consider that almost a secondary data protection mechanism? I mean, I'm sure people would still want to use traditional backup, backup
exactly
method.
It, though. But it kind of gives you that almost first line of protection when it comes to data protection. And we even have what we call, snapshot policy, where you can set a policy to automatically create and retain snapshots on a schedule.
Okay. And then another question just came in here from the audience, and that is there any replication technology built into it, or what do you recommend for replication?
Currently, we have synchronous replication, but basically if you want kind of, DR or backup type, we've integrated with Veeam and Zerto, and anything that works with your hypervisor will work with Maxta. Awesome.
Well, excellent presentation, Arjun. Thanks so much. Appreciate Maxta being on the Megacast today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.